is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Folks, today is Wednesday, May 11, 2022. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Another black man killed by a police officer, this time in Houston, when an officer with a history of excessive force shoots a black man as he flees. We'll talk to the family and their attorney, Ben Crump, who is demanding the body cam footage be released. The congressional map approved by Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis has been deemed unconstitutional by a Republican-appointed judge because it dismantles black districts. We'll talk with a Florida. First of all, it also says that black people cannot choose their own representative, as what the judge ruled. As we look at last night's midterm primaries in Nebraska and West Virginia, we'll examine who is being classified as working class voters and how candidates neglect people of color. We'll chat with author Tim Wise. Also, the United States Senate does not move forward with a bill codifying Roe v. Wade. Yes, Senator Joe Manchin did not vote with the Democrats. And the case of a black Texas woman is sentenced to 5 years in prison for illegal voting is getting reviewed. Her attorney will give us an update. Also, I was in Miami at the F1 Miami Grand Prix over the weekend with the first black driver in the Indianapolis 500. Willy T. Ribbs will join us tonight to talk about the work that he is doing in F1. Plus, in our Tech Talk segment, an app is used to keep tabs on your kids, keeping truancy down. Y'all don't want to miss that. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on Go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
A Houston family wants answers after their loved one was shot and killed by a Houston police officer last month. Officers attempted to execute an arrest warrant on April 27th after a brief car chase involving Jalen Randall. He was a passenger. Officer Shane Prevette shot Jalen as he ran away. Officer Prevette has a history of excessive force. And so in 2019, charges were dropped against Officer Prevette after being indicted for allegedly kneeing a drug suspect during a 2017 arrest. Joining me now is Ben Crump, civil rights attorney, the family attorney, plus Warren Randall, Jalen's father, Tiffany Rachelle, Jalen's mother, Tony Rachelle, Jalen's stepfather, Jalen Randall, Jalen's daughter, Shavandra Stagg, and of course, Jalen's mother. Glad to have all of you here. And so let me just first of all start with what actually happened here. Set up for us what took place. Why were the cops pursuing this car that Jalen was in, and how did he end up being shot?
Roland, do you want me to go?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having us, Roland. And this is heartbreaking for his family. Almost 2 weeks ago, in broad daylight, Roland, the police allegedly executing a warrant against Jalen Randall, this 29-year-old African-American father. They chase him, and inexplicably, Roland, because he has no weapon that they can see or anything like that, but they shoot him in the back of his neck, killing him. And then there are witnesses that say after they shot him and he was on the ground, one of the police officers came and put their knee in the top of his back while he's bleeding to death. And regrettably, they continue to try to justify yet again another black man being shot in the back. And what we tell them all the time, Roland, they don't need to say no more, just release the video, because there's no reason the police should ever shoot a black man in the back running away from them. We've talked about it, Roland. Why is it when a black man's running away from a police officer, a white police officer, that he's the most dangerous man in the world, where he's going to shoot him, even though he's not posing a threat? And so that's what we're dealing with in your home area of Houston, Texas, and the fact that they haven't released the video, and we know that this officer was charged for aggravated battery on an African-American previously, but yet he was still allowed to remain on the force.
So, okay, so they were pursuing Jalen. Again, were they pursuing him or the driver? Because Jalen was a passenger in the car, and they were. What kind of warrant were they trying to execute?
They were pursuing him, as we understand it, and it was a warrant. They said him and his girlfriend had got in an argument.
So it was a warrant dealing with domestic abuse. Is that what it was?
It was a domestic situation, yes.
To the Randall family, what has police told you about what happened, or what has been conveyed to you?
Well, Roland, the police haven't told us anything at all. They never even told us that Jalen had been shot. We had to find that through external factors. We had to find and track down which hospital he was actually taken to. So they haven't reached out. They haven't even spoke with us at all. Not to me, at least I know. I don't know about Tiffany. They hadn't even said anything to us, period.
So, again, based upon what y'all have been told, that they. So first of all, where were they? Where did this actually happen? Was it in a neighborhood? Was it somewhere in the city? Where did this actually happen?
Well, it happened right in our backyard. It happened in Pleasantville. And so it happened in Pleasantville subdivision in East Houston, which we all, men, you know what I said. And so all we did know, it was supposed to have been, like they say, claimed to be a short chase or whatever. They said that Jalen got out the car, and all we know, as soon as he set feet on the ground, he was shot in the back of the neck by one officer only. So it seems to be, in most of these situations, if it was a threat, more than one officer would feel it was a threat. And why did only one person shoot? And why was that the one with past previous abuse issues?
So, but is there any kind of police report? Are they saying they saw Jalen brandish a gun? What are they actually saying was the cause, the reason why shots were fired?
They haven't given a reason, but after the fact that he was shot, then they said a gun was in a bag, never garnished, never brought out, never used or pulled out in a threatening situation. So that's the only thing that we've been told. We've really been just in awe. We don't know what's going on because we haven't spoken to anyone, none of their spokesmen, none of their, people they have in charge for us, just, explaining the situation. No one has reached out to any of us.
Ben, you are pushing for the body cam footage to be released. What has been the response from HPD, from the city of Houston, from the district attorney's office?
You know, it's nothing. Today, Roland, we released the findings of our independent autopsy to prove scientifically what we long suspected, since HPD didn't tell the family anything, but obviously they saw the body and where it appeared to be from the neck. But Dr. Adami gave us his autopsy finding and said, no, it was absolute from the back to the front. So he was clearly running away from them. That was what we proved, and that hopefully will put greater pressure on Houston Police Department to release the video. They say they're going to release it in a month or so. And this is just mystifying to us, Roland. If you got a video, all the police officers got body camera, why does it take so long to do an investigation and release the video so you can build trust with the community by being transparent? We all know he's been shot in the back. Why are you going to delay it? But that's what they continue to do over and over again. The only thing I can think of, Roland Martin, and, you know, Attorney Monique Presley and I, we talk about it all the time. They're trying to get their story together to justify the unjustifiable actions of this police officer, because there is nothing they can say to tell us we didn't see what we saw when they released that video and shows Tiffany and Mr. Randall's son being shot from behind. Nothing they can say. And George Floyd 2-year mark is May 25th. We want that video released before May 25th.
Final comment from the Randall family.
Tiffany?
Your final comments yet? Well, the final thing we want, Roland, is justice, transparency, and we want to bring light to situations that are occurring in this country. Like I said earlier in the speech that we had, you know, you have all these money being allocated to the war in Ukraine and the border situation. We fight every day to live good, healthy lives in our own community, and we don't seem to be able to get any help, any understanding. They keep putting people within our community that know nothing about our community, which causes some type of and distrust, I guess, that they have with us. But we need better policing. We need policemen. We need more of our own policemen to represent us in the community. We just want to bring the light and have justice for Jalen. That's what we want, Roland.
All right. Well, let me thank all of you, Attorney Ben Crump as well. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roland Martin.
I want to bring in my panel up for today, and Scott Bolden, a former chair of National Bar Association Political Action Committee attorney here in D.C., Tanya Washington Hicks, professor, Georgia State University College of Law, Monique Presley, legal analyst, crisis manager. Glad to have the three of you. What immediately jumps out, Scott, is when we see these cases repeatedly, police shooting someone who's fleeing. And we don't know fully what happened here because we don't have the body cam footage. But again, it's one of those things, if you know where someone lives, and if someone has not brandished a weapon or threatened your life, why are cops still shooting people in the back or from behind when they're running away?
Because they don't care. That's why. It keeps happening over and over again. You would think, Roland, that the police department and training and these officers would get really smart. I mean, it's been like several years when we have the iPhone cameras and what have you. And you can see where the lawsuits, the criminal prosecutions have had zero impact on these cases. I could shut my eyes, listen to that interview you just did, and put Philander Castile or Laquan McDonald, and I could just pick a name and put it to that interview. Whether I'm right or wrong, the fact is my eyes were closed, and it's still bad police misconduct. And this officer has another prior charge against him. They don't see us, so it keeps happening. But it's really the dumbest thing I've ever seen, that there's been no positive impact by now. And the camera and the footage, as Ben said, is to get their story together, but they'll tell you these like race neutral and administrative neutral reasons why the footage isn't available. Well, it's got to be reviewed. We've got to make sure the technology was working the right way. And then it's got to go through several channels of review and what have you by higher ups and what have you. And it's all nonsense. There's nothing more powerful as a piece of evidence for or against a defendant or the police than the actual video footage. All we have to do is look at it, and we can reach our own determination. They fear that transparency, though. And so this is going to take some time. But I hope one day that you never have to report on another young black kid, or male or female, being shot by the police. One day, that's going to happen. And I hope it happens sooner than later, because the killing fields of America are littered with black men and black women at the hands of a police force.
Monique, you always hear these people say, well, why don't you just comply? Why do you flee? Why do you run away? But it still goes to, if you're police officers, you know, you're shooting at somebody run away. We've seen examples in Philadelphia where they shot someone who wasn't even involved when somebody was attempting to flee. And again, if you know who the person is, you know where they live, you can wait another day to arrest them. Okay, you're going to be able to find them, but now he's dead because he was trying to flee, and you shoot him in the back.
Right. APO, resisting arrest, is a crime. APO, assault on a police officer, that's a crime. Failure to follow police orders, if the orders are lawful, that's a crime. Those are all, in most jurisdictions, misdemeanors. They're not even felonies. They're not punishable by death. Piss a cop off is not a crime, and apparently piss a cop off is being punished by death. 2 people in the back of the neck, in the back of the head, in the middle of their torso. And Houston, I got a bone to pick with you. I love being able to go home. Lord knows I do, but not because it's funerals, not because you keep shooting black men and black women. HISD and Baytown ISD, Baytown Police Department, Houston Police Department, and Lamarck Police Department, the Joshua Feast case, that's another shot in the back without being armed. There's a disproportionate number of those coming out of that Galveston County and Houston County, and there's a problem. And the problem is not policy, because people want to come in and say, let's change the policy. I'm people who want to come in and say, let's change the policy. But it is anti-policy to shoot a fleeing felon in the back already. They are offering justifications for it. If it is a threat to the community, if it's armed and dangerous, there are already justifications on the book, but they don't have those. So that's why we end up waiting for body cam footage, as Scott said, so people can get stories together, so that they can invent things like furtive gestures and fear of something that was going to happen next. I thought I saw them turning around. They wait, they break down the footage, they break it down into little bitty parts, they slow it down, they speed it up, they come up with a story, and then they give us a story because there aren't enough witnesses. If there were witnesses with cameras, we'd already have the footage by now, because they wouldn't have this time. They wouldn't have this delay. So fraternal order of police, a pox on your house. Houston Police Department, get your act together. Where is Acevedo when we need him? He need to be an expert on your show, Roland, to tell the truth about these folks. He don't work there no more. Give up the goods. He's following me right now. I'm about to tag him in this post. Enough.
And it happens, and it's not just one city, Tanya. It's repeated cities, and again, cops get no bill, all good. People say justified, and again, you go, if somebody's running away, you yell, don't worry about it, we gonna catch you. I'm sorry, death should not be the ultimate sentence. Not for an arrest warrant for domestic violence.
Yeah, and you asked, Roland, why does this keep happening? It keeps happening because Black lives don't matter. I mean, that's the bottom line. This person was posing no threat. The gun was in the bag, which they could not have known until after they killed him. I would wager if that video, the body cam footage showed that he did something, we'd already have it. And so, this post hoc attempt at justifying another incident of unjustified killing of a Black person, unfortunately, is part of the course. And I mean, as Monique said, Houston, we have a problem.
You know, Roland, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, final comment. Go ahead.
This has been happening, and the Supreme Court has said on the Tennessee v. Garner that it is illegal, unlawful for the police to shoot a nonviolent fleeing felon. The case in Tennessee v. Garner happened in Memphis, where they were chasing a young Black guy in the dark. He hit a wall, climbed the wall, and while he was climbing the wall to get into another neighborhood, running from the police, who really hadn't done anything. I can't recall what the exact facts were, but he was unarmed, and they shot him in the back. So since 84, 85, the Supreme Court has said it is illegal to do this. Then why in 2022 are you still having to report on these types of cases? It makes no sense. That ought to be a fundamental piece to every police department in the country. You cannot shoot a nonviolent fleeing felon in the course of your duty while you've got a gun, a badge, and a flag. And yet in 2022, they're still doing it. It's utter nonsense. It's deadly nonsense. It really is. Everybody listening, look up this case, Tennessee v. Garner. We see it being violated regularly in 2022.
Well, it'll be nice if DAs would actually enforce that law. All right, folks, hold tight for a second. When we come back, all the folks are talking about Ohio and West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, working class voters. Aren't they really talking about white folks? But why is it that when media, politicians keep using working class voters, why don't they just specify who they're talking about? We'll talk with anti-racist Tim Wise next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Next on A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, summertime when the living is easy, or is it? Summer vacations, class reunions, kids in summer camp, all fun, but stressful. You need to get into a summer mindset and have a plan. Oh yes, our panel gives us their favorite summer planning hacks. On the next A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie here at Black Star Network.
Why is it so hard to see Panther? What deal? Wow. I mean, if you go to Amazon, I think I tried. So I have a collection of
That's a hard movie. They charge you $300 on Amazon.
I was like, I'm not about to pay no $400 for a VHS copy. Right. What's the deal?
Man, it is interesting, Roland. It is the movie they don't want you to see.
Power to the people.
It's funny, I made New Jack City. You can get it anywhere. Posse, you can see it anywhere. But a movie that says that it is not an accident that we medicated the Black communities right around the time when they were getting militant, when you had the Panthers starting to organize, the people starting to vote and march on Washington. We let these communities get medicated. In fact, that comes up in The Godfather, you know, where they say, as long as it stays in the Black communities. So we asked the question, they tried to ask us questions. I asked them, the reporters when we did, I said, listen, why is it a 13-year-old boy in the hood can find a way to buy a gun, some liquor, or church, or some crack, and yet you can't find them to arrest those people? You can't arrest that dealer. Why is that?
Yo, what's up? This your boy Ice Cube.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks. Number of primaries took place last night. Nebraska, West Virginia, choosing Democratic and Republican candidates. In Nebraska, the guy who Donald Trump wanted, he lost. You also had West Virginia, where you had a person running for Congress there who believed the January 6th and the whole big lie. Well, he won as well. So that's what we expect. Okay, the Republican Party is all about Donald Trump. But what's interesting is when you see all of these different stories, that are being done. It's, oh my goodness, what are Democrats going to do about the working class voter? Why are these working class voters, why are they not supporting Democrats? But the working class is. Oh, I'm sorry, but when you say white, well, then that changes the whole conversation. And this has been going on for a number of years, and part of it is because the media doesn't even want to actually identify white voters. It's as if they just don't have, it's not possible. Author Tim Wise was tweeting about this, and I saw it. He often has talked about this. Of course, he has his book, Dispatches from the Race War, among other books that he has authored. Glad to have him back on the show. So, Tim, this is the thing. It is as if media just cannot say white people. They just can't say it. I mean, excellent as saying black voters and Latino voters and Asian voters. They cannot just say, when they're talking about, when you hear candidates say the working class, they ain't talking about black and brown people.
Right. And it's not just the media. I mean, politicians, including Democratic Party politicians and consultants, have a long history of doing this too. And not just sort of mainstream corporatist Democrats, but Bernie Sanders often conflated the working class with white folks. When he would speak of the working class, and when a lot of folks do, they have this 1930s New Deal labor union imagery of guys on the factory floor or, up 100 stories on the girders building the buildings in New York. The majority of the working class today in 2022 are black and brown, disproportionately women. They are not factory workers. It doesn't look like 50 and 60 years ago. So it's very important for us to specify what we mean. The reason, it's not just an academic point, right? If you define the working class as being the same as white, then it leads to different types of strategies than if you have an understanding that the working class is multicultural and some of it's already with you. The black and brown portion of it, definitely overwhelmingly with the Democratic Party, the white portion not, which tells you what? It tells you that the problem isn't a class issue per se, right? That it isn't about, well, you just need to talk about economics more, because clearly black and brown folks are either getting the economic message of Democrats already, that they are, the party that at least is trying to do something for working people, or those black and brown folks realize, well, maybe they're not that great on those issues, but they're better on these things. But either way, what it tells you is a simple, what do they call it, kitchen table issue approach isn't going to get those white voters, because if that's all it took, they'd be there right now with black and brown folks, just like in 2016 when folks said it's economic anxiety driving people to Donald Trump. If that were true, black folks would have voted for Donald Trump in record numbers because they had the greatest economic anxiety or economic pain, but they didn't. So what is it that white folks aren't getting that black and brown folks are? Or what is it that the Trumpist Republican Party offers to those white people that the Democratic Party doesn't? And the reality is the answer is racial scapegoating. The answer is cultural anxiety. The answer is all this great replacement nonsense. How does the Democratic Party respond to that? You can't respond to it by ignoring it, by acting like, oh, we can't talk about that because they'll call it identity politics. We can't talk about racism. We can't talk about xenophobia. We can. We have to talk about it smart. We have to talk about it the way Ian Haney Lopez, brilliant political scientist, talks about it in his race class narrative project stuff that he's working on right now. You can talk about racism and you can talk about class, but you got to discuss those together, because there's a reason that black and brown working class people can seem to recognize their class interests, and these working class white folks are just voting. They'll tell you, there was a story in the Washington Post a couple years ago. They asked these working class white folks in PA, has Donald Trump brought you new jobs, 2 years in? Had any new jobs, any new factories? And these Pennsylvania white folks in central PA were like, nah, but he really stuck it to those ball players. When they took a knee, he really stuck it to them. They're not voting on their health care. They're not voting on their wages. They're not voting on the quality of their schools. They're voting on how can we blame black and brown people for the mess that we're in. And the Democratic Party better figure out how to respond to that scapegoating, other than saying, well, if you vote for us, we'll get you broadband internet.
Right.
Nobody cared.
And this is precisely, I mean, what you just laid out is literally, my book drops in September. It's called White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. And that's really what this is all about. It is not about, the money. Donald Trump beats Hillary Clinton by 450,000 votes in 2016 because he was against NAFTA. So all of those workers who would say they were losing their jobs because of NAFTA. Okay, but then you come back in 2020 and then he wins it again, and you got all of these are labor workers. These are people who supposedly about unions, and they're voting against the guy. They're voting with the guy in the party that hates unions.
Right.
Except police and fire unions.
Right. The only piece of legislative success that Donald Trump had as president, the only thing he really accomplished that wasn't some random executive order, which was usually about a culture war subject, or the courts, packing the courts, was what? A tax cut for incredibly wealthy individuals and corporations. It wasn't a tax cut for working class people whose taxes have either remained flat or in some cases gone up over the last several years, but they still voted for him. So it's very obvious that it isn't that. That's not to say Democrats shouldn't talk about economic issues. They absolutely should, but they should be talking about it in a way that says, you know, there's a reason that we don't have good, universal, affordable health care for everyone. You know what the reason is? Because they keep telling you that if you get that, those brown people are going to cheat the system. Those brown people are going to take advantage. That's what they're being told. We need to actually be pointing out the scapegoating and saying the reason we can't have nice things is because these folks over here are lying to you about who's to blame for the fact that you ain't got nice things already. So we have to talk. Yeah, it's fine to blame people for stuff, but the wrong people are being blamed. And it's incumbent upon the Democrats to say this is a game that's being played on you. This is what Lopez and others are talking about in their work, is to say, listen, it's not that we're calling you racist. You're not a bunch of awful, horrible people. We know there are certainly some among, the insurrectionist class of the Republican voters who are. But it's not about you being bad people. It's about you being people who are being sold a bill of goods. It's like if Penn and Teller, were the president, these master illusionists, right? And Penn or Teller or both as a combo up there with one hand trying to distract you over here while they're doing something else over here like any good magician does. That's what the Republican Party and the right has been doing. And 30 years ago, when I started doing this work in Louisiana against David Duke, we said at the time, Duke lost those elections, lifelong white supremacist, former Klan leader, but he got 6 out of 10 white people to vote for him in the Senate race in 1990. And we said at the time, y'all think this is just Louisiana, y'all think this is a Southern thing, and but my boss at the time, a guy by the name of Lance Hill, said, David Duke politics is like cocaine. It is, first off, it's white, but it's also easily concealable and transportable across state lines. And 30 years later, the politics of racial scapegoating that David Duke was working on at that time didn't quite work yet, but it worked with 6 out of 10 white folks. And now it is what MAGA Trumpist Republicanism is. It's about saying you're in pain, you're struggling, you're afraid, and these are the sources of your anxiety, of your problems, of your fears. We can just control those people, your life will be better. The Democrats have got to take that on frontally. They can't just dance around it.
And take it on front, directly, I think is important. He's a perfect example. I remember when in the last election, Senator Bernie Sanders kept talking about the working class, and he kept talking about identity politics. And I sent one of his people a text message saying, I said, if Bernie Sanders talks about this one more time, I'm going to bust his ass publicly. And so one of his guys were like, he sets a meeting up with me and Senator Sanders. So I meet him in his office. I tell him point blank, I said, man, don't you understand that when you're talking about identity politics, you're frankly speaking the language of the right? And I said, and I'm telling you, I said, that's what they were saying about John Lewis and the SNCC workers and black people. When you're fighting for civil rights, identity politics. I said, so you better be damn careful. I told him point blank. And I said, Senator Sanders, you need to be going talking to white people about identity politics. I said the same thing to Senator Elizabeth Warren. And I'm like, y'all gonna talk about the white people. And so, but here's another example. So President Joe Biden and his team dropped this video today when he met with Chris Smalls and the Amazon workers out of New York. So watch this.
You're in trouble, man. Yeah, I am. Good trouble. You're my kind of trouble. Good trouble. Congratulations, man. Thank you. I got in a little trouble by it. You may recall I was saying I'm looking forward to them being organized. Yeah, well, well, you got it done in one place. Yeah. Let's not stop. That's right.
All right, and that's great. He met with Chris Smalls and those workers. But Reverend Barber and Reverend Liz Theo Harris of the Poor People's Campaign, they have been trying for more than a year to sit down, have a meeting with President Biden and Vice President Harris, to not just with those two, but with actual poor and low-wage workers, people that I had on the show last week. And the White House and his team have refused to actually schedule a meeting. Now, they're coming here June 18th, and I'm sitting here going, a third of all voters in America are poor and low-wage workers. Hello, if you want to win in November, how about you meet with them, not just folks who got, and again, the work that they did getting that union at the Amazon place in New York, that's great. But what the hell is taking so long? The GOP ain't gonna meet with them.
Right. Well, my guess is that there's a willingness, and again, all credit due to that union work that they've been doing there. It's fantastic. We've seen the same kind of thing happening at Starbucks. We're seeing it at Amazon. We're seeing a lot of really amazing labor work. Point being, disproportionately being led by black and brown workers. Very important to point that out, right? Again, the working class, very different than what it is in sort of the Bernie Sanders 1930s factory floor, New Deal kind of imagery. So it's great what they're doing, but the problem with that is, I think, at least in part, the willingness to meet with the Amazon folk is, Amazon's easy to beat up on. The right doesn't like Amazon because it's Jeff Bezos and he owns the Post. Right. And he's looked at as a liberal. So I think they feel that that's safe. Well, we can meet with the people that are unionizing Amazon because sort of everybody hates Amazon for different reasons. Right. Like the left feels this way about them. The right feels this way about them. But if you meet with Reverend Barber, oh, well, that's different. If you meet with poor folks and working class folks more broadly, not just in one particular company that it's easy to beat up on, then that's going to send a more dangerous message. They better wake up from that. And they better start to realize that unless they are prepared to talk about the intersection of issues of race and class and gender, because now this attack on reproductive freedom and bodily autonomy, it's all part of the same thing. The key message that Democrats never seem to get, and that people on the left forget, the main difference between right and left, it has nothing to do with how much government you support, has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with whether you support traditional hierarchy or whether you support challenging traditional hierarchy, which means if you're on the right, you believe white authority, male authority, straight authority, etc., right on down the line, is what needs to be in charge because those are the better people. So that explains why you're going to defend an electoral college system that enshrines permanent minority rule. That explains why you want to restrict voting because you don't think certain people should be voting anyway. That's the reason you want to restrict women's reproductive autonomy because they're just women and they shouldn't make those decisions for themselves anyway. That's why you want to get critical race theory or just accurate history out of the classroom because that empowers the voice of non-traditional leaders. Right? We don't want to hear their voices. That's why you want to get rid of any discussion of LGBTQ folk because you want to restore straight supremacy and Christian hegemony. So we need to be talking about it this way. If you like traditional authority and you think that works well for you, by all means, you should be a Republican. But if you're poor, if you're working class, if you're struggling to put your kid through college or pay for your health care, then by definition, traditional authority ain't working for you. Right. So even if you have a disagreement with certain people in the left or progressive coalition about some issue that touches on something that you care about religiously or whatever else, like you need to remember traditional hierarchy has never worked for poor people. Traditional hierarchy has never worked for working class people. Traditional hierarchy works for itself. And the Republican Party is supporting all of those traditional hierarchies. And the Democrats need to be speaking about that as a problem. Right? That traditional authority and traditional hierarchy hadn't been serving us very well. And I think they're afraid to do that because, again, so much of their money comes from wealthy folks. And so, they've sort of thrown in with a lot of corporate folks over the years, and that's gotten them in trouble and made it very difficult for them to bring this message. But they better do it, because that's what really separates the two sides, is essentially whose side are you on, the top or the bottom, right? And the bottom, whether it's a race hierarchy, a class hierarchy, a gender hierarchy, a sexual hierarchy, a religious hierarchy, the bottom, right, is getting shafted every single time that we continue to return those people to power.
Tanya, question or comment?
I agree with Professor Wise. We need to highlight that the shared experience of all of those folks at the bottom is a lack of resources, a lack of health care, a lack of a livable wage, and focus on what is not happening because white, straight, male, educated folks are in charge. Part of the reason that they don't refer to Black people when they're referring to the working class is because they don't want to refer to Black and brown folks as working. Exactly. Right? That challenges this whole idea that we're just sucking off of the system. And, I agree that the Democrats need to have a better strategy. We can't just say we're not them. We need to point out some realities. The realities exist. We just need to point out who's responsible for them.
Right.
Monique?
No, I mean, I appreciate everything that you do, Tim. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really do believe that there's a way, though, for us to accentuate the things that the administration is doing while doing the course correction on others. So, for instance, I know that high-speed internet connection is a big deal. And it may be a hard sell for people to understand that some people can get on 1 million Zoom meetings easily, some can't. Some students are able to do their homework at home. Some have to do it in a parking lot outside of Starbucks because they have the Chromebook the school gave them, but no Wi-Fi. And these gaps are poverty gaps. They are race gaps. And so I am thankful that that's part of a bipartisan infrastructure plan. And I just wonder whether the issue isn't that the Biden administration does not care about the right things and isn't trying to do the right things as much as it is people don't know the things that they're doing.
No, I actually don't think that's what
I was asking Tim.
No, actually, but it's my show and I'm gonna respond. I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna jump in here, and then Tim is gonna respond as well. Here's to me is a fundamental problem. Okay, it's not that folks don't care. You gotta tell white people directly, hey, we got you this and they didn't. That's part of the deal. So what Tim is laying out here is that you have Republicans who are gonna claim they did all these great things, they don't care about you, we're the party of the working class, we believe in populism, and then what Biden does, he makes an announcement, but what he's not doing is going directly to those white voters in the rural places. In the last election, Tim, Tom Tillis was sitting here polling around 16, 18% among African Americans. How? This man was the architect of voter suppression, voter ID in North Carolina. You know why? Because Dems were not actually talking to rural Black people. Part of the thing is when I see Democrats having these conversations about broadband in rural America, they're talking to suburban America. You gotta go where the broke white people are.
Well, that's part of it. But let me also say this. Look, I know consultants don't like to hear this, and a lot of people in the party don't like to hear this. And the Jim Carvilles of the world, who were locked in a paradigm that's 30 years old and was barely true then, don't like to hear it. But the idea that in the 21st century, voters are making decisions on bread and butter pocketbook issues, principally when they are white. Now, Black and brown folk, I think, are, and I think the truly broke, hardcore, hard scrabble, quote unquote, working class do. But, let's be clear. The white folks that are the biggest problem are sort of that upper working, lower middle, sort of anxious middle. These are not, the January 6th insurrectionists were not a bunch of rural working class people. They were white folks with incomes at or above the median, often 10, 20,000 above the median in this country. They were disproportionate. The one thing that linked them was coming from communities where there had been an uptick in the number of brown people or black people. That was the number one determiner of whether a geographic locale sent insurrectionists to the Capitol. It wasn't their economic position. It wasn't if they had internet or not. It wasn't if they had good health care. It wasn't if their wages had gone down. It wasn't gas prices. It wasn't any of that. It was, are there more brown people here than there were in 2012? And if the answer was yes by a significant number, that is what predicted insurrection. So we can talk about all these things as good policy. ACA was good, inadequate, but good policy. Broadband internet, good policy. But as a political sales tool, I know of zero evidence that says anyone is going to go to the polls and vote for a Democrat who wasn't already likely to do that because of broadband internet. I don't know of any evidence. If there is research that says this moves the needle, then it needs to be presented, because I've looked for it. I can't find it. Partisanship is overwhelmingly negative right now, which means we have got to talk about really big issues, and we've got to enter into that culture war. You can't skip around the culture war. You have to point out that the culture war is a distraction. You have to call it what it is. It is a scapegoating tactic used by magicians to keep you from realizing what they're actually doing. And the good thing about that approach is, it's, you know, a lot of people like the Bernie Sanderses of the world want to beat up on the millionaires and the billionaires. Nobody cares about the millionaires and the billionaires except for the fact that they're not won yet. Right. So I mean, I happen to think that those are fine targets, but your average white dude out there does not care. What he will beat up on is a politician or a media person, because they don't trust them. So the argument should be these politicians and these media folk are leading you astray, making you fear brown people, making you angry at black ball players, making you angry at whatever, right? Thinking that they're the reason that your life sucks. And the reality is they're the reason that your life sucks. Those politicians and those media folks that don't want to tell you the truth. Anybody can be steered to that a lot easier than they can be like, you know, I mean, I don't happen to like Elon Musk, but most people, for whatever reason, think he's a genius because he wants to colonize Mars and buy everything. Like, so you can beat up on Musk. I think that's fun, but it's not going to work the way it would if we would talk about politicians scapegoating, politicians distracting us, right, as opposed to sort of an old school class politics, which just says it's about, you know, like the elite versus everyone else. That's an important message, but I just don't think that works right now. And I don't think this look at all we've done for you thing works right now, because folks are in a mode where they are going to focus on this sense of loss. The research on this says that people are far more likely to mobilize politically to defend against loss than they are to gain something. So if the Democrats say, if you vote for us, you'll get X, Y, or Z, but the other side says, if you don't vote for us, they'll take X, Y, and Z from you, Republicans win every time. The idea that you can get them to mobilize because they'll get this job or this wage or Green New Deal or whatever doesn't work. No evidence says it works. People mobilize to defend against the thing they already have. And that's what they're being told is being taken by immigrants, taken by affirmative action, taken by people, you know, using up taxpayer dollars, taken by the LGBTQ folks who are trying to recruit their kids. That is the threat mechanism and the threat mobilization that the Democrats have not figured out how to respond to. And so it's about the Democrats saying, no, you're right. You're in real danger. Right? People are, in fact, trying to hurt you, but it's not them, right? The people that are trying to hurt you are these other folks over here, and they're doing it while distracting you with all these shiny baubles that, you know, get your attention.
Scott?
Yeah, you know, this was a lot to unpack, Professor. I don't disagree with anything you've said. I would offer a friendly amendment that really has no resolution, and that is this. How do you get, if the Democrats do everything that you say they should be doing, messaging or otherwise, there's a big gap there in whether you can convince white folks who are Trumpsters to believe the Democrats and to believe that it's worth trusting them when they are the party of black and brown and gay folks. I think it comes down to race, period. And I know you say it a lot of different ways, but fundamentally it may be cultural, but it's rooted in race and white people not wanting to be affiliated. And I think you said this in regard to the Democratic Party and what they represent. I use, for an example, the ACA. right? Obamacare, if you will. It helped insure 50 million people, majority of them poor and white, I would argue. And yet they would say they would never vote for Obama, but it gave them health care. And so Democrats went to them and said, this is the health care that you're receiving right now from Obama. And those 10 poor states that are in the South that get more federal aid than ever, they're still voting for Republicans who are against entitlements. They voted against Barack Obama, even though he gave them health care, and the messaging was clear to them that this came from Obamacare.
No,
they rejected Obamacare and said, but I want American Health Care Act.
No, they didn't.
I think race plays a powerful piece in this, and convincing white people to come back to the Democratic Party or to do away with or walk away from the Republican Party, it's less academic than that. How do you get through to them to convince them to say yes, as opposed to fixing the messaging that probably won't work because Republicans are so much better at it?
But Scott, here's one thing. But here's one thing though they didn't do. What you just described, they actually didn't do. They literally did not. They literally did not go to the brokest, whitest parts of the country and say, "Hey, Affordable Care Act. Oh, you don't like Obamacare? It's the same thing. Oh, by the way, I passed it for you. Do you know why, Mississippi?"
I think they did.
No, they didn't, Scott.
You don't think they did
Scott, they didn't. Scott, I was sitting in the White House. I told Obama directly, why do you keep going to Virginia and Ohio and the suburbs talking about the Affordable Care Act? Go to the reddest, whitest, brokest, sickest parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and take them on. Well, you know, they were like coming up with whatever the hell. And so what they did was, you gotta go to somebody and say, guess what? Your senator voted against your issues when it comes to heart disease, your issues when it comes to opioids, your issues. They don't do that. What they do is they simply go through this deal of like, hey, we're the better ones, not them. If you're gonna be in a fight, be in the fight. Swing.
Let me tell you what.
Tim, go ahead.
Let me tell you what they should have done from the start. One of the reasons that they probably didn't try that in certain states, particularly in some of those southern states, is that, as we know, and I live in Tennessee, so this happened here, the legislature in a lot of our states undercut ACA because the Supreme Court said they could when the Supreme Court did not require the expansion of Medicaid.
Right.
It allowed states like mine to not expand it because they were trying to kick the legs out from under ACA anyway, right? And they did. They limited how much it could benefit people in a lot of states. And so a lot of the people in those red states didn't reap the benefits the way they did in Connecticut and California and other places. So what they should have done, I think first thing Biden should have done, or anybody should do now, is say, listen, those of y'all that are in those states where your Republican legislatures undermined your health care, we're going to make sure that we're going to expand coverage for you right now. We're going to push through huge subsidies specifically directed at you, at your states, because your Republican lawmakers undermined your ability to benefit from this thing. It's not we tried. You know, this is what here's what we passed, here's what we supported, and it was y'all's state. And the reason that's important is not only might that get some people to recognize who benefits them and who doesn't, but it also raises the question at the state level where Democrats are playing from so far behind. You got all these legislatures that are super majority Republicans because people think that their interests are being served. They need to be reminded the reason that their health care sucks, if it sucks here in Tennessee, is because of what the GOP did.
Boom.
Not what Obama did. They tried. But the GOP made it impossible for that bill to benefit you the way it was intended. That should have been the message. And I haven't heard that message from anyone in this.
Tim, the evidence of what you just said is what happened in North Carolina. All of these white people were initially against Moral Mondays and against what the NAACP and Barbara was doing. And all of a sudden, those white folks said, damn it, our rural hospitals are closing. And Reverend William Barber told me there was a parade in North Carolina and a white guy draped in the Confederate flag walked up to him with tears in his eyes and said, you and I don't agree on much. He said, but thank you for fighting for our hospitals. And so in North Carolina, the reason they have been able, why Democrats have a majority on the state Supreme Court, which overturned many different things. Why does a Democratic governor? Because what they did was they talked about the very issue issues of broke white people and said, those are the people who are screwing you. And they explained to them how they were getting screwed. And that's why when I spoke to the North Carolina NAACP, I ran into these white women who were the founders of an NAACP chapter in the mountains of North Carolina. And they said, ain't nothing but broke white people around us, and we are running the NAACP chapter because they hit the issues. All I'm simply saying is, and the thing is this here, Scott, you ain't gonna flip the MAGA people. That's not the point. The point is you go after the people who ain't voting. The largest group of people to win are the people the Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Campaign are targeting. And all I'm saying is that's a lot of white working class people. That's who they've been mobilizing in West Virginia. We told you, it was a white woman who watched this show, ain't never heard of Reverend Barber, was watching this show, saw him, and then she volunteered, and now she's a co-chair of the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign. So white folks can be reached, but somebody got to actually talk directly to them in a way they get it. And unfortunately, to Tim's point, Democrats are depending on a bunch of well-paid D.C., New York, California strategists who ain't trying to talk to broke white people.
Right. Or acknowledge any of the race stuff at all. And that's a long-standing thing, by the way. I mean, even when we did the work against Duke, we had high-paid consultants. Mark Penn was one of them, and he's still, still doing his thing. Where he was telling us at the time that we shouldn't talk about David Duke being a racist because, we got to have racists vote against him too, or he's going to win. They were saying we shouldn't talk about him being a Nazi, shouldn't talk about him being an overt white supremacist. We should just talk about the fact that he didn't pay his taxes or something, or that he dodged the draft in Vietnam or something, or, whatever, like anything but race. This aversion to discussing how racism is used as a weapon is a white, upper middle class and affluent consultant disease that has never served progressives very well. And because that kind of skittishness, that unwillingness to say, this is what they're doing to you. Even we've talked about this before, Roland, that back in 2016, the biggest mistake Hillary Clinton made rhetorically when she said the thing about deplorables, the mistake there wasn't that there aren't some people like that. We saw them on January 6th, right? But the far better message, think about what happened if she had said, you know what? I don't think you're deplorable, but that guy does, because he thinks all he's got to do is talk about Mexican rapists and drug dealers and you'll roll over for him. He thinks you're a racist. He thinks you're a bigot. He thinks you're such a bigot that all he's got to do is like wave this flag about black people and brown people and quote unquote shithole countries or whatever, right? All he's got to do is talk about those folks and you'll buy it. And I believe in you. I trust in you. I think you're smarter than that. That would have been a far different message, right? Because that wouldn't have been beating up the voters. That would have been saying, you see that dude? You see what he's doing? You see what he's trying to do to you? You're smarter than that. And then some of those voters would have still fallen for it, but some of them would have been, oh yeah, look at what that jackass is trying to do. He's trying to con me. He's just like the rest of them, right? So this is the difference between sort of mainstream consultancy and mainstream party folk and like understanding the way that race is weaponized and has been weaponized and what it's going to take to de-weaponize it in this country. And I'm telling you, we got 1 million people that have died from COVID. A lot of white folks have buried their grandparents and their older parents because early on when the numbers showed it was black and brown folk doing the dying, a lot of white folks took this not seriously. We know that from the data now. We know that from several academic studies that white folks got nonchalant because, oh, it's just those black folk over there doing the dying, and then wait around 8 months and it was us, right? So there's a lot of ways that we can start to talk to white folks about how their indifference to black and brown suffering ends up coming back to hurt them. Yep. And listening to the siren song of this culture war stuff comes back to hurt them. But I just don't hear any of that at the national level from the party or from mainstream politicians. I hear it from folks like Reverend Barber and Ian Haney Lopez and others that are doing that work on the ground, but I just don't hear it from the top. And that's what it's going to take in the midterms and in a couple of years in 24.
Well, we'll see if they actually do any of that. Can't say they didn't hear it because we talk about it all the time. Tim Wise, certainly glad to have you on the show. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about a case out of Texas. Boy, they keep trying to put a sister in prison for voting illegally. Y'all, really? But she may have got some help today from Texas Court of Appeals. We'll explain the case of Crystal Mason next. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Download the app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox, Samsung Smart TV. Also, join our Bring the Funk fan club where every dollar you give goes to support this show. Of course, send a check or money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com. Roland@RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, you're going to learn about the silver tsunami, which means that 1 million people are turning 65 every day, and they're going to need some kind of care. You're going to meet two sisters whose situation with their own family led them to start a business in this industry, and now they're showing others.
This is our passion, our mission, our purpose, our ministry.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Next on A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, summertime when the living is easy, or is it? Summer vacations, class reunions, kids in summer camp, all fun, but stressful. You need to get into a summer mindset and have a plan. Oh yes, our panel gives us their favorite summer planning hacks. On the next A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie here at Black Star Network.
It's Kim Whitley.
Yo, what's up? This your boy Ice Cube.
Hey, yo, Peace World. What's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
In Florida, Circuit Court judge ruled against Governor Ron DeSantis' redistricting map. Judge Elaine Smith said the version approved by the Republican-controlled legislature diminished the rights of African-American voters in the northern part of Florida. The maps removed Representative Al Lawson from his seat, giving the Republicans a majority of the seats in the state. You see this happening where Republicans are using their power to be in charge of racial gerrymandering, limiting the impact of black voters. And so the courts threw that out. This voting issue also, we still see the same thing happening when it comes to voter suppression in states like Texas. Today, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals ordered a lower court to review whether there was sufficient evidence to convict Crystal Mason, the black woman sentenced to 5 years in prison for illegal voting after filling out a provisional ballot while on parole 6 years ago. This win is crucial in our effort to have the conviction overturned. Her attorney, Kim Cole, joins us from Texas. And Kim, literally 6 years this has been going on. The amount of money Texas is spending to put this one sister in jail when her parole officer testified she wasn't aware. I mean, you look at the evidence, it's without a doubt she just didn't know. They are hell-bent to make Crystal Mason an example in Texas.
That's absolutely true, Roland. The district attorney in their case against Crystal Mason in her original trial, he specifically stated that he wanted to send a message and asked the judge to sentence her to a stern prison sentence. And they are trying desperately to hold on to that without any regard to the fact that they did not prove their case. Here in Texas, the election code specifically states that a person commits the offense if the person votes in an election in which the person knows that they are not eligible. Well, here, as you stated, Crystal had no clue that she was not eligible to vote. The state's own witnesses, that brother that was on the stand from the Bureau of Prisons, who was a supervised release officer, he testified, we don't tell them whether or not they can vote. He was the state's witness, and the state also presented county officials who sent letters. I guess they thought this would prove their case. They did send letters to Crystal's home address, but Crystal was in federal prison. She never got those letters. So they never proved that Crystal knew that she could not vote, yet she was still convicted. And that's why we're here today. The Second Court of Appeals, because she was sentenced by a judge. There was no jury in this case. There was a judge who knew the key witness, who had actually met with the state's key witness a couple of weeks before Crystal's trial. So that judge found Crystal guilty. He was appointed also, I'll put that in there, a Republican appointee. And he found Crystal guilty. It went to the Second Court of Appeals. And the Second Court of Appeals did some serious legal gymnastics to get around the actual language of the law. The law is clear and unequivocal that a person commits this offense if the person tries to vote or votes in an election that they know they're not eligible. So it's clear that the person has to know. The Second Court of Appeals stated in their opinion, it's irrelevant whether or not Crystal knew that she couldn't vote. The fact that she knew that she was on supervised release is good enough for us. And they upheld her conviction. And that is why today, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals told the Second Court of Appeals, that ain't it. The law specifically states that the person has to know. And so they told the Second Court of Appeals they need to reevaluate Crystal's case to see if the state actually proved that Crystal knew that she was not eligible to vote. And it is my firm belief that they did not.
I mean, the thing that just, again, that is just so crazy is that, my God, this just, it's been going on and on and on. I mean, 6 years. I mean, and for folks who don't know, explain, when you say she was in prison, so she went back to federal prison because of the state conviction, correct? Or something like that?
Yes, even before Crystal was convicted, right before the 2018 election, which is why I think all of this was orchestrated, right before the 2018 election, Crystal was sent to federal prison for violating the terms of her supervised release by getting a new criminal charge, which is this voting charge. So you see how circular that was. So they made sure to put her in prison before the 2018 election. She went in September 2018 and served a 10-month sentence. The judge in her federal case violated her supervised release, sentenced her to 10 months in prison, as well as an additional 3 years of supervised release.
I just sit here and just look at this and go, man, talk about a complete waste of resources. Look, we certainly appreciate you joining us. Keep us abreast. Hopefully, Kim, man, hopefully this nightmare is going to end soon.
It is essentially torture, Roland. I call Crystal every Wednesday. For the past 2 years, I've called her every Wednesday to let her know whether or not she will be free. She has a new grandbaby. She was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see my grandbaby off to preschool. And so every Wednesday I call her. And today we got this news, which this is favorable news. However, this isn't the end of it.
Yep.
Her freedom is still in the balance. And I sincerely hope that the Second Court of Appeals follows their own advice. They said it is not their job to question an unambiguous statute's wisdom, but to rather apply it as it is written. And as the statute is written, Crystal walks free.
All right. We certainly appreciate it, Kim. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
I mean, we're going to my panel. This, Tanya, is maddening. I mean, it is. I mean, we have the son of Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, tried to vote in 2 different locations, the wrong location. He wasn't charged, he wasn't arrested, nothing. We've got you got white folks down in the villages in Florida who knowingly voted, lied, voted for Trump, Fine. Mark Meadows, the chief of staff of Trump, registered to vote in 3 states. 3 states. South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. Ain't nothing here. And these people, I mean, and the crazy, look, I'm from Texas, and you don't even have a sensible Republican stand up and go, what? Why in the hell we wasted all this damn money on this one woman, and we trying to put her in state prison for 5 damn years? This is crazy.
Let's call it what it is. It's strategic, okay? Because we don't want certain people voting. It's an intimidation tactic where people will question whether they are eligible to vote and not take the risk because they don't want to end up suffering the same ridiculous fate that this sister is suffering. I mean, she will be in my prayers tonight. This is not how democracy is supposed to work if we actually value voter participation as we say we do.
Lord Monique, the woman get convicted, she go back to federal prison, then all of a sudden she get out, losing a house, losing a job, all this sort of stuff. And again, in the trial, her own probation officer testified on the stand and said she wasn't told by anybody she couldn't vote, and it was a provisional ballot. The shit didn't even count.
Right, absolutely. No, this is because there is so little evidence of the voter fraud that they maintain is rampant across the United States. They make truly just an example, a scapegoat out of one poor woman, a tragic case, a travesty of justice, but they use it and as some sort of symbol of all of the people who are out there who are getting away with it. And it's horrible. It's hideous.
It's crazy, Scott. It's crazy.
Well,
and again, it's like, oh, black folks, we're going to let y'all know how we feel.
Well, that's probably true. And the 5-year sentence is extreme. I'm surprised the appeal wasn't about the over-sentencing of this case. Remember, this case didn't have to be. They could have fined her. They could have disorderly conduct, some type of violation, and gone on her way. They didn't have to violate her on probation if they had given her some type of warning or, like I say, a violation. But here's the problem with the defense in this case. As I read about this case, there was an affidavit she had to sign. She had to read before she could sign to get the ballot. And on that document said, you cannot vote if you have been convicted of a felon. And she signed that document and then went and voted. I'm not saying she deserved 5 years on it or anything because it was provisional ballot. What I'm saying is that this decision today sends it back to the Court of Appeals. Knowledge is a factor, and I don't know how the defense gets around that affidavit that was signed. So I agree with you all, but I'm trying to figure out how you get around that, because if the Court of Appeals upholds it, somebody's got to challenge the extremeness of this sentence. Maybe they have already, I don't know. But if she loses at the Court of Appeals, she risks going to jail for 5 years over less than a minor violation of the law.
Scott,
we need to keep looking at this case.
This is very simple. The state can drop.
What is it?
No, actually,
It's
Scott.
the law.
No, Scott. It is
It's
simple.
the law.
No, Scott.
And the law.
No, Scott. It is simple.
Is this in Texas
No, Scott.
again? Is this in
Scott. This is very simple. The prosecution can actually drop the case.
They can, but they have the discretion
No,
not
no.
to.
Let me
They
say it
chose
again.
not
Let
to.
me say it again. This is a very simple case. This is a woman who was convicted. Who
If
went?
they
One
choose
second.
that
One second.
They
A
don't
woman.
have to.
And first of all, Scott, I know they don't have to. I'm saying they can. And what I'm saying it is simple. The state can drop it. You would think some DA would go, why in the hell are we spending, if I'm looking at resources, why am I spending 6 years on this case.
Well, racism costs.
Well, hell, I
Racism
understand that.
costs.
But what I'm saying is, to Tanya's point, this is all about, we're going to make an example out of this black woman, and we're going to send a signal to all the rest of y'all black people. We're going to do the same. Speaking of making an example, y'all, today, the sheriff in Liberty County, Georgia, William Bowman, this is who he is. He actually came out today and talked about the incident that happened to the Delaware State lacrosse team. Y'all should be looking for the video. Y'all, the man said that it wasn't racially involved. Then he also said that he countered what the student said. Counter what the student said by saying that the property of the students was not searched. Here's the problem with that. He lied. Y'all, this is the body camera footage that one of the newspapers discovered. And in the body camera footage, it shows the cops going through backpacks and the bags of the students. This is a 21-minute video that shows you what actually took place. And so the sheriff, he steps out there and says, well, no, I don't condone racial profiling and all that sort of stuff, defending his own officers. But y'all wrong. I mean, so here's the body camera footage right here of when the cops were on the bus. Pull the audio up. Let's see if we got audio. All right, so this is the part where they were talking to the students. Okay, they were talking to the students. You see right here, they going through bags.
Hey, Roland, what was the stop for?
They were stopped because they said that the driver, now you see it right here. The sheriff, the black sheriff said their personal effects were not searched. Did his dumb ass not see the video before it got released? Here are examples. The body cam footage of his own sheriffs pulling the bags off. They stopped the bus because they said the driver was driving in the left lane. And that's supposed to be the passing lane. So they pull the driver off, then they get on and they say, we searching everything but for drugs. And then they claim that there are so-called coach buses often driving up and down the highway in Delaware where they got human trafficking and they're bringing drugs in. Like, are you serious?
Woo!
So Tanya, Delaware State is looking at how they're going to respond. But this black sheriff, all skin folk ain't kin folk, this black sheriff defended. And he said, as a former Georgia State trooper, longtime cop, he doesn't condone racial profiling. Why in the hell they got stopped? Why did they get searched? And here's the deal, Tanya. They pull a driver over for so-called driving in the left lane. He never got a ticket.
See, I mean, where was the reasonable suspicion that justify searching these people's effects? He is the reason why people do not trust police officers. I mean, when you will tell such a blatant, confirmable lie, right, in defense of officers who are clearly operating on some sort of conclusion based on the race of the people on the bus, do nothing.
Now I'm gonna get you real good right here. Right here, they are looking at a package. We had the Delaware State coach on the show on on Monday. And the woman said that was a gift from a student. They actually opened the gift to see what was in it.
You know, Roland, my colleague raises a really good question. If the stop was for him driving in the wrong lane, you pull him over and you give him a ticket for wrong lane usage, right? How do you get to the search? Did someone consent to a search? And how do you get to even asking to search the bus full of college kids who are play soccer or lacrosse or whatever.
Scott, that was no consent. That was
Right.
no. They literally said we searching everything.
Oh,
And there was no consent, and there was no
with you.
reasonable suspicion for the search.
Right. If it's a traffic stop, by the way, all those listening, if you get stopped for a traffic ticket and moving violation, right, the police don't get to search your car simply because they're giving you a ticket. And if they ask, you ought to say no and memorize their badge number, because this is crazy. Look at that. The storage of all of the luggage is open, and they've got it out, and they're looking for drugs. The dangerous part of this is if they were more corrupt, they could plant drugs in one of those packages or suitcases and then charge them.
Well, I'll tell you. This reminds me of when Boosie was on when there was an incident. Scott, don't worry about it. You don't know.
Okay.
When the rapper Boosie was in Mississippi, and they had pulled over his bus, took everybody off, and one of his guys was like, "Yo, Boosie, the bag is on," and the bag contained about $300,000 worth of jewelry, diamonds, gold, and all kind of stuff. So what happened was the cops then claimed, Biloxi, Mississippi, they claimed that no such bag was found. Well, Boosie, one of the guys who he was working with, Hashim Nzinga, who has since passed away, I knew Hashim for a very long time, and so Hashim said that he said, "Man, Boosie would love to talk to you." So Boosie went on the radio in Mississippi and said, he said, I'm headed right now to talk to Roland Martin in an interview. So we do the interview. Boosie leaves. 10 minutes after they leave, they come back and they say, "Oh, they found the bag." So all of a sudden, again, so it was a bag of $300,000 worth of jewelry. The cops
confiscated
it was never booked into evidence. It was never on an evidence report, and they said they had no idea. But it wasn't until Boosie went on the air and said, "I'm headed in Atlanta to go do an interview with Roland Martin," and all of a sudden, when the interview was over, his lawyers got a call, "Hey, we found the bag."
Well, that's just an innocent mistake. That happens. No big deal.
Yeah. But again, folk need to understand what's going on here. So what legally can Delaware State do? Can they sue the department for this wrongful stop? What should they do, Scott?
Yeah, they certainly can for violation of their civil rights, unreasonable stops, unreasonable delay, unreasonable search for absolutely no basis whatsoever. They could go under Section 42, but they have local laws and federal laws that a good lawyer will be able to sort through and actually figure out where to file the lawsuit. But this is an unlawful stop. The question is, what are their damages? What is the value of their civil rights or constitutional rights being violated, if you will? I don't know whether one of those statutes calls for treble damages, if you will. Sometimes they have limitations, but absolutely, this makes no sense. Now, this is a vacuum now. We're talking about it in a vacuum because we don't know all the details. We haven't seen the police report.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we do.
What else is going on?
We do.
Anything?
That guy right there is the driver. Now go back. That guy is the driver. He was the one who was driving. They claimed that he was driving in the left lane, which was a passing lane. They pulled him over.
What?
You said one of the details. They pulled him over, pulled him off of the bus, began to question him, and then that's when they went back on the bus and told all of the students, about 27 people, coaches and students, that they were going to be searching everything for drugs, and then told them, "Tell us right now if they're drugs, because if not, it's going to be a problem later." They literally threatened the students.
All right, well, file the lawsuit. You interview the students, file the lawsuits. The damages on this may be a bit of a challenge because what there's the valuation of a violation of your constitutional rights and civil rights. But Ben Crump can handle that piece. I do defense work. He does plaintiff stuff. He'll go for it, and maybe they can all get paid.
No, you can do it too. Go ahead, Tanya.
What about intentional infliction of emotional distress, extreme and outrageous behavior
You
that
gotta have
results in
physical.
extreme. No,
Depending
you
on
don't
where
need
you are.
physical. You need extreme emotional distress. These students are traumatized.
Yeah, I know that. But what I'm telling you, in some jurisdictions, you have to have some type of physical injury. And I thought what we were going to see on the video, where they had handcuffed someone,
No, they
or
didn't.
roughed up someone. They didn't do that.
But bottom line
You
is,
have to look and see in Delaware whether you need a physical injury.
no.
or not. I
This
understand the extreme
was not in Delaware. They're from Delaware State. It happened in Georgia. So it happened in
Yes.
Georgia.
Oh,
So
shit.
I say
Yeah.
sue that ass. All right, y'all, sue them punk asses. And for that punk ass sheriff who's black, your little punk ass should get cussed out by all your family members for defending that bullshit.
Now he gonna call you about being called
I don't
a punk
get.
ass.
Guess what?
Okay?
Guess what?
Now,
It's
you
okay.
better be able to back
It's
that
okay.
up.
I'm gonna call his punk ass tomorrow.
He ain't gonna come on the show since you called him a punk
Well,
ass.
guess what?
No.
For him to defend that bullshit, man, get the hell out of here. You know damn well that was foul.
He ignorant. Okay, but he ignorant.
Oh, so my staff said we tried to get him. They said they tried to get him on the show, but he wouldn't come on. Call his ass every day.
Oh.
And matter of fact, see if there's an email for his ass and a phone number. I'm gonna tell all of our followers, our listeners and viewers to email and call his ass because it's right. Bottom line is that ain't doxing. That's sending a damn email. You can just email. First of all, what do you mean that's doxing? You can email a public official. Hell, he paid by taxpayers. Hell yeah, we gonna hit his ass up. And I hope he don't get. And I hope he don't get invited to the family reunion.
I'm gonna come on the show with him. I'm gonna represent that.
Yeah, don't get invited to the family reunion.
Or the barbecue.
Yeah, hell no. All right, y'all. Real quick, Dr. Lisa Cook made history by becoming the first black woman in the history to sit on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. Last night, the Senate confirmed her nomination. The final vote was 51-50, with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie. All these Republicans, of course, oppose her. Here's the moment history was made.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative and the nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered, made, and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's actions.
Well, there you go. They oppose this black woman.
Humbled
Y'all, she's got a doctorate in
been...
economics and is a professor at Michigan State University. During a confirmation hearing, Cook says she would bring diverse perspectives to the Federal Reserve Board to help it fight inflation and keep unemployment low. So we certainly congratulate her on that. All right, y'all, got to go to a break. We come back, we're going to talk racing with a history maker himself, Willy T. Ribbs. Y'all show him. Willy T. Ribbs, he's up next on Roland Martin Unfiltered, the first African-American. Well, y'all hurry up and show the man thank you. The first African-American to drive an Indianapolis 500. We'll talk about Formula One racing. It ain't just about the Europeans. Really want to make sure the brothers and sisters are showing up. We'll discuss next on Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Why is it so hard to see Panther? What deal? Wow. I mean, if you go to Amazon, I think I tried. So I have a collection of
That's a hard movie. They charge you $300 on Amazon.
I was like, I'm not about to pay no $400 for a VHS copy. What's the deal?
Man, it is interesting, Roland. It is the movie they don't want you to see.
Power to the people.
It's funny, I made New Jack City. You can get it anywhere. Pasta, you can see it anywhere. But a movie that says that it is not an accident that we medicated the black communities right around the time when they were getting militant, when you had the Panthers starting to organize, and people starting to vote and march on Washington. We let these communities get medicated. In fact, that comes up in The Godfather, where they say, as long as it stays in the black communities. So we asked the question, they tried to ask us questions. I asked them, the reporters when we did, I said, listen, why is it a 13-year-old boy in the hood can find a way to buy a gun, some liquor, or a church, or some crack, and yet you can't find them to arrest those people? You can't arrest that dealer. Why is that?
A powerful movement is rising across America.
From the Mississippi Delta to the Apache stronghold.
From the homeless encampments of Washington State to the coal fields of Appalachia of West Virginia.
We are the 140 million poor and low-wealth people in this country, and we are building the Poor People's Campaign. a national call for moral revival.
On June 18th, ahead of this year's midterm elections, while the Congress is still in session, we will hold a mass poor people's and low-wage workers assembly and moral march on Washington to arrest the attention of the nation, to put a face and a voice on poverty and low wages in this country.
This is a watershed moment for justice and democracy in America. There are those who say that transformative change is impossible, but history teaches us that it is precisely in times like these that people must build a broad and deep movement from the bottom up.
We must compel this nation to repent, to lament, and to see the realities that have been hidden for far too long.
On June 18th, we will come together to lift the voices of the poor and low-wage workers who know that change is not only possible, it is essential for our survival.
We will make the connections to show how systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, the denial of health care, the war economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism and white supremacy are hurting us all. We will show the nation the faces of Americans who cannot afford to go back to normal.
We will detail the policies that can move us toward a society that works for everyone. And we will pledge to go home and build power for transformative change in this year's election and for years to come.
Because the question should have never been, how much will it cost to address poverty? The real question is, how much is it costing us not to?
Somebody's been hurting our people. It's gone on far too long.
And we won't be silent or unseen anymore.
Join us in D.C. on June 18th.
Build with us for a third reconstruction in America. Visit poorpeoplescampaign.org.
Hello, everyone. It's Kiara Sheard.
Hey, I'm Taj.
I'm Coco.
And I'm Lily. And we're SWV.
What's up, y'all? It's Ryan Destiny, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, fam. Over the weekend, I was in Miami for the Formula One Miami Grand Prix. Henry Peterson and I went down there, got a chance to go on the track, check things out. It was an amazing experience, folks. It was the first time they had the Grand Prix there in Miami. Incredible show there. And the deal is, people understand, in the United States, look, you have NASCAR, you got IndyCar series, but F1 is crazy huge all across the world, and they're really trying to go big here in the U.S. And so the people like Will.i.am who were there, ran into Michael Jordan, ran into Michael Strahan, Spike Lee, Robert Smith. We ran into a lot of different brothers and sisters. Michelle Obama was out there, Jamie Foxx, LeBron James and the crew. It was incredible, and I was invited by Willy T. Ribbs. Yes, I ran to Matt Damon as well. That was funny because Matt was being interviewed on ABC, and he was trying to speak to me and not do an interview. And so had a great time out there, and I was invited by Willy T. Ribbs. That's Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills. And Willy T. Ribbs, of course, a history maker, first African-American ever raced in the Indy 500, has been in auto racing for a number of years, and he's been hired, brought on by F1 to be one of their ambassadors and really try to drive diversity, if you will, in the sport. Willie, what's happening?
How you feeling?
All right, you there?
Hello.
Gotcha. Audio wasn't up there. So there we go. So man, first of all, it was an incredible experience being there in Miami. And just explain to our audience, I first got really introduced. I mean, I know about Lewis Hamilton, saw stories, but it really wasn't until I watched the Netflix special that really got me involved. Henry Peterson, who our production here, he told me about it. And that show is hugely popular and has really introduced a lot of Americans to Formula One racing.
Well, that Drive to Survive special on Netflix has really broadened Formula One's base in this country just like that. And
to see, you know, a lot of people have heard of Formula One, but they really never focused on it. And I saw a piece about you saying that you really never watched Formula One. You really never watched any racing. And when I saw that you got hooked on Formula One because of Drive to Survive, I decided, well, let me reach out to you and get you to a show live, because there's nothing like a Grand Prix live. It's like going to a Super Bowl.
And when you talk about that, I mean, it was jam-packed. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people were out there, and they were in Miami. They'll be in Austin later this year, and they will be in Las Vegas next year. And so what are you hoping to do for F1 to get more African-Americans interested? We know NASCAR has tried to reach out to African-Americans over the years. I remember being a part of an initiative, you know, about 15 years ago. It really didn't go anywhere, and you're laughing.
It wasn't a sincere, the olive branch was not sincere. And it was, I think possibly there was a lot of pressure on them from corporate sponsors to represent what America looks like, and they just, they're not getting it done. And Formula One, you know, I started my career in Europe, and I went over there to be a Formula One driver. I was the first black man ever to drive a Formula One car in 1985, the same year Lewis Hamilton was born. So Formula One reached out and said, look, we want to increase our footprint in the black community in the United States and worldwide. So I told him, well, I know who to call. His name is Roland Martin, that is. So that's the beginning, and I'm glad you were there. When I found out that Michelle Obama, First Lady Michelle Obama, was right over the top of us in our suite, I knew that, and she came 2 days. Most people of that stature only come for race. She came for qualifying, and she came on race day, on Sunday. That says it all about Formula One. And and believe me, if Formula One didn't have its handout to African Americans, Michelle Obama wouldn't be there, period.
So so here's the deal here. You have there are people who they love the different teams. In many ways, they identify with the countrymen. You don't have any American drivers, though, in F1. The only person of color, Lewis Hamilton, who is, of course, he's British. He's a brother. So look, when Tiger Woods came into golf, there was a whole bunch of brothers and sisters who didn't follow golf who followed him. And so really, you know, how are you conceiving this idea of getting African Americans interested in Formula One if there's no American or an African American to get behind?
Well, there's got to be, first of all, a driver of color, period. And Lewis is the guy, and he's just not a name. Lewis is 7-time world champion. He's won more Grand Prix than any driver in history. He's won more pole positions. He's more track records. Lewis Hamilton is without a doubt the greatest Formula One driver ever. So having him, and he spends a lot of time in the United States, and he's pushing diversity, and actively we're looking for the next young driver to come into the series, preferably American, right? And but it took a lot to develop Lewis Hamilton. Ron Dennis, who owned McLaren at the time, took Lewis right out of go-karts at 12 years old and put him in cars and smaller formulas and developed him. He knew he was fast, and he knew he was going to be a winner. And Ron Dennis developed Lewis Hamilton right into where he is today, and that's what it's going to take here. I would have liked to have seen Michael Jordan or LeBron James or any of the big heavy breathers that play sports to come together and support a young driver like Miles Rowe, for example, or Ernie Francis Jr. Those two are right now lead candidates to move up the ladder. And that's what it takes. It takes money and lots of it.
Indeed. I sent, matter of fact, there was a tweet that I sent you something when you spoke to Miles Rowe. I got a tweet the other day, and here's a young man who's been doing well, but needs about $400,000 to keep competing. And so when you talk about, the money that is involved. First of all, these racing teams are $300 million a year. It is an expensive sport, and we often hear the same thing when it comes to golf. We're now even seeing it when it comes to baseball, these specialized teams as well. And so the reality is, for African Americans, we're pretty much, the two dominant sports for us are basketball and football, because the cost to participate is different, and that becomes a barrier to entry.
Well, that's why you haven't seen very many African Americans in the sport. I was lucky when I grew up. My family had a successful business that had the money, and my dad raced anyway. So he raced as a hobby. He didn't race professionally. But I knew by the time I was 9 years old what my career was going to be. And, apart from, spending time with my dad at the racetracks and learning racing technically, learning the technical side of the business, I was also learning the performance side, on my grandfather's ranch. And a year and a half out of high school, they sent me to England to start my career because I wanted to be a Formula One driver. But back in those days, even when I went over there and won my first championship in my first year, I got no American support, no corporate support, no manufacturer support, zero.
Wow. And of course, you dealt with a whole lot of racism. You dealt with white guys who were not happy that you were there. There's a Netflix documentary called Uppity. They were not happy to see Willy T. Ribbs, especially when you wouldn't bow down.
No, the name of the film was Uppity, and that's what they called me. But I sort of enjoyed it. I loved the pushback, and I never complained about it. I was never going to play the victim, but if you crossed the line, they knew that they would be eating their dinner through a straw for 2 weeks. They knew it. So the toughest part for me in my career was the corporate support, and same with Miles Rowe. And same with Ernie Francis. Nothing has really changed. And Formula One is the biggest in the business. There's nothing close to Formula One when it comes to level of stature, professionalism, technology. And when they when they emailed me and said, we'd like to hire you as ambassador for diversity and inclusion, I told them, I said, well, you hired the right guy.
Questions, Scott?
Yeah. Hey, Willie, I'm a big sports fan generally. I know of your story, and I just want to thank you for being a trailblazer and your outspokenness. You can be the first, but it gets tough being first and outspoken. I was in Austin at the last Formula One race, and it was just incredible. I was surprised that it's a 2 or 3 mile track, and all the technology that goes into it. Was it always like that when you were racing, or have you seen the progress of technology and sophistication and just how Formula One has grown internationally since the time you drove?
Well, the tracks have gotten more advanced as the cars have gotten advanced. The speed of the cars are much quicker than they were 30, 40 years ago, much faster. And the tracks had to get longer, right? Now, not every track is long. Monte Carlo is sort of it's maybe a mile and a half, but Monte Carlo is the institution, and they're going to keep that show. But the newer tracks like Miami, it was 3.4 miles long. with a 1 mile straightaway. Coda in Texas, that's 3.6. You've got to give the drivers room to race, right? They've got to have that much real estate to race on. So I just think that they know they know what to design based on what the designers of the cars are doing.
Tanya.
Yes, I mean, this is so exciting. I don't have a technical question like Scott, but I wanted to know, have you gotten any takers in terms of encouraging folks to invest in the next generation of Black racers? We see the folks that were inspired by Tiger Woods. We see the folks that were inspired by Venus and Serena Williams. Like, are people responding to this call for resources that would allow young Black people to enter into this sport? Because as you know, and as you've exemplified, if given the opportunity, we can do it and do it at the highest level of achievement.
Well, Michael Jordan's involved with NASCAR right now. He's not involved with Formula One, and Formula One is the cost of Formula One is probably 40 times the cost of NASCAR. So it's an international series. I've reached out, and in my career, there was only one African American in my career that if it wasn't for him, I would have never been in Indy 500. It would have never happened. There would have been no history if it wasn't for Bill Cosby. He called me and he said, "What do you want to do? And what is it going to cost?" And I said, "This is what it's going to cost just to do Indy, $500,000. He said, and this was in 1991. And he says, "Okay, no one else." Even with all the publicity that when we announced in Tavern on the Green in New York, there was no one else that said, we want in on this. We want to be involved, because the more capital you have, the better chance you have to get across the finish line first.
Yes.
Well, indeed.
Thank you.
Well, Willie, look, I look forward to going to Austin for the next F1, and look, whatever we can do to help, and would love to see the next phase of what F1 does in attracting African Americans.
I'm gonna push him. I told him, said, "You know who you're hiring, right?" Now, I have a tendency to rub fur the wrong way, but I'll pat it back down. Don't worry about it.
I trust me. That's what they've said about me the same way. But somebody, that's why I always say, you can't be scared if you Black-owned media. You can't be scared if you're a conscious brother. Willie, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a bunch.
Great seeing you, and I'll see you soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks a bunch.
Thank your guest for me.
All right, thanks a bunch.
Thanks.
All right, folks.
Cheers.
All right, folks. Time for our Tech Talk segment. All right, not sure what's going on with the video there. There we go. Thank you. All right, y'all gotta explain to me why in the hell the video freezing. That makes no sense. All right, folks. Every Wednesday, of course, we have our Tech Talk segment where we focus on African Americans who are in the tech space. We brought you some great individuals who you may not be aware of, and so and of course y'all have been responding great. People have been creating apps and all sorts of different things, and so my next guest is in the same space. Glad to have her on the show. And that is one thing we're going to talk about here first. We were supposed to go to break, but I went ahead and just blew that off and just kept right through it. And so let's talk about how do you keep tabs on your badass kids? Now, some of y'all know you got kids who now, they with their friends and they driving around, they doing stuff, and you kind of want to know what they doing, and you're not trying to sit here and listen to them lie to you, because y'all know some of these kids lie. Let's not even front. We've all seen it happen. And so that is the case. I know we of course, with my twins here, there was this particular app. What did my wife put? I think it was called Mama Bear or something like that. And so she actually had that app on my niece's phone where we even knew if the car they were driving and how fast the car was going. Well, a former school official wanted to better communicate with families about attendance and students' behavior. So she was like, you know what? We need an app. So Joanna Smith-Griffin, founder and CEO of All Here, joined us from Boston, Massachusetts. So tell us exactly, what is All Here? What is it all about?
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for having me. So as context, All Here helps schools to provide 24/7 help and support to kids and parents through a smart texting-based app. So if you imagine that every student's family had a personal advisor to guide them through school, someone that knows the answers to all of the common questions, can speak multiple languages, and respond to needs and concerns right away, even at night or on the weekends, that's what All Here has built for K-12 schools. So it's a chat bot that makes 24/7 support possible for every single family in a school.
All right, so when we talk about keeping up with them, how is it tracking them? In what way?
So as a bit of background, I was a public school teacher, and the idea of like keeping track on those, as you said, like badass kids, was like top of mind. Because being present and engaged in school has such an impact on students' academic outcomes. So I got to see firsthand how kids who are missing a lot of class are treated often in a punitive way. And I wanted to build a company that helps schools scale, support, and help 24/7, that's equitable and treats the family as a valued partner in their child's schooling. So how All Here works is that it is a chat bot that plugs into schools' background platforms. So we're plugging into platforms that track things like grades, absences, and we can have conversations with families about their child's personal record over text. So right now, if a family sends a text asking how their child is doing in school, we can pull from those data points to have a personalized but still empathetic conversation that gets them the right information that they want at the right time, and immediately gets them a personalized guide to getting their child back on track if need be.
Questions, Tanya, what you got?
So I teach education law, and so I'm aware of some of the challenges that you certainly encountered as a teacher. And thank you for taking that experience and applying it in this context to provide support for parents who may be overwhelmed, particularly in the context of the pandemic. So what has the response been from parents? I saw some of the text messages where the parents are actually responding. I mean, just asking a parent, are they okay? Alerting a parent that the child has had a certain number of absences about which they may not have been aware could be groundbreaking. I have a 19-year-old and a 6-year-old. As a parent, I would love to have something like this that allows me to stay in contact and provides a resource for questions that I may have regarding my child and his or her education. So what has the response from parents been? And kudos for creating such a useful resource.
Thank you so much. So we're currently being used in over 8,500 schools across 34 states, including some of the country's largest school systems. And the feedback that we've gotten from parents, so we actively text more than 2 million parents and youth every single day. More than 98% of them are engaging with us over text each and every day. The response has been overwhelmingly positive, as well as proven to have an impact on outcomes. So we were proven through research to improve attendance by 17%, to reduce course failures by a third, and also increase student GPA. But perhaps the most powerful piece of feedback that we hear from parents, especially in environments and contexts where there isn't a real atmosphere of trust between families and schools, is that, hey, this is a lifeline. And a lot of parents come to see our service as an advocate through helping them support and guide their own kids to and through school.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Scott?
Boy, if you had this when I was in high school and grade school, what did the students say? Because if I'm a student, I probably wouldn't want this. And they're so technologically advanced. One, what feedback do you get from the kids who probably don't like it? And then two, how can they get around it if they have to or want to? Gotta be careful on that one.
Gotta be careful of that one. So I would like to focus on the examples of how we help kids as well. So for example, if a child's bus is late, they can text the bot. Most often, if a child is texting us, they are in high school, so in grades 9 through 12. And what happens in that example is that we can help them navigate that transportation challenge. And if that child is still having trouble getting to school, we can alert the appropriate person school side to get them help. So oftentimes we become the intermediary between the student and what can sometimes be a more punitive way of handling whatever issue they face. The other example I would just add quickly is that as we are in the middle or the midst of a youth mental health crisis in this country, we often see youth use the service as a way to express feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, and we take great pride in being able to route the right student to the right support and resource at the right time.
All right, then. Well, look.
All righty. Thank you.
Great app. Tell people how they can access it.
Visit us at allhere.com and reach out. We would be happy to help you.
All right, then. Joanna, thanks a bunch, and good luck with it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Final story, some sad news. The NBA is mourning the death of Hall of Fame basketball star Bob Lanier. The league says Lanier passed away Tuesday, surrounded by his family after suffering some health issues for a number of years. Bob Lanier played center for 14 years with the Detroit Pistons and the Milwaukee Bucks, gaining 5 consecutive division titles. However, his impact went well beyond the court. Lanier served as president of the National Basketball Players Association and as the league's global ambassador for more than 30 years. Bob Lanier retired in 1984, was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1992. Bob Lanier becomes an ancestor at the age of 73. All right, folks, that is it for us. I want to thank Monique, Tanya, and Scott for being with us. Thank you so very much, folks. Don't forget, tomorrow I will be broadcasting Town Hall in Kansas City, Missouri, where we'll be talking about the racism that black police officers are having in Kansas City. Of course, we had them on the show, the Kansas City Urban League, where they talked about this. And I tell you, it is a huge issue what these cops are going through in the police department. And so we are going to be in Kansas City for this town hall on tomorrow, beginning at 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern at the Robert J. Mohart Center, 3200 Wayne Avenue. And so, of course, you can RSVP. And so we look forward to having that conversation. Racism. So the Urban League of Greater Kansas City presents Racism in the KCPD, Addressing the Black and Blue Divide. So we'll be live streaming that right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network, folks. So until then, I'll see you. Y'all have a good one. Holla!